The discovery of Earth's thrill seekers. The Cylon research vessel, with its sleek, silver exterior reflecting the distant light of the nearby stars, remained perfectly still in the cold vastness of space. Within its hollow, sterile interior, the crew of Cylon scientists busily monitored the live transmissions from Earth. These scientists were not your average researchers. They were beings from various species across the galaxy, chosen for their sharp intellect and ability to analyze and understand the most complex phenomena in the universe. Yet, despite their advanced education and years of accumulated knowledge, the behavior they were observing from humanity left them utterly perplexed. "Start the next feed," Celso, the chief researcher, ordered. His 4 eyes narrowed as he tapped his scaled fingers across the control panel. The atmosphere within the observation room grew tense as the new footage began to flicker to life on the screen. What they saw made Celso's appendages twitch in disbelief. A human male, clad in nothing but a thin protective suit, was seen launching himself off the edge of a cliff. The air below was an endless drop, the wind howling as he descended toward the earth far below. But the human was not afraid. No, he was laughing. His face glowed with exhilaration. A rope attached to his body was all that kept him from a deadly fall. He swung back and forth, his body hanging in midair like an insect caught in the breeze. Bungee jumping, Celso muttered to himself, trying to wrap his mind around the concept. But it was just the beginning. The next transmission showed an entire group of humans leaping off the side of a plane at high altitude. No parachutes, just the raw, primal instinct of the human spirit pushing them to the brink of danger. Skydiving, Celso noted, his voice low with disbelief. These creatures jump out of fully functional craft. For fun, how can they tolerate such a risk? Their sensors then switched to a new clip. Humans scaling jagged rock faces, moving with wild abandon up treacherous cliffs in the heat of the desert. Their hands clutched at the rough rock, their limbs quivering with effort, yet there was no hesitation. Rock climbing, one of the crew members suggested, his voice tinged with confusion. And they're not even doing it for survival. They're doing it as a sport. Celso nodded slowly, his mind trying to make sense of the ever-expanding puzzle. Humans thrive on danger. They crave it. But as the crew of the Cylon continued to watch, they realized it wasn't just their extreme sports that were baffling. It was their entire existence. Humans had built entire subcultures around confronting and embracing risk. They sought out challenges that other species, even the most advanced, would find completely irrational. It was as if their existence depended on pushing themselves to the brink of life and death, only to survive and thrive against all odds. Another transmission appeared. This time, it showed humans running through streets, darting around large, rampaging bulls. The creatures, strong and wild, charged with horns aimed to gore, yet the humans never flinched. They danced between the bulls, testing their speed, agility, and courage with every passing second. Running with bulls, one of the crew members observed, "I've never seen anything like it." Celso could hardly believe his own eyes. This is not normal behavior. They willingly risked their lives for entertainment. "I don't understand," he murmured, his voice filled with disbelief. And yet, every time they do, they seem to come out victorious. The crew continued to observe, recording data on human behavior. There was no stopping the transmission now. One clip after another showed humans in extreme situations, sailing dangerously close to the edge of active volcanoes, surfing in treacherous waters, running with predators, and even wrestling with large animals that would terrify most species. The sheer volume of footage was overwhelming, and yet it was all too clear. For humans, pushing the boundaries of life and death was a way of life. "Are they all like this?" a crew member asked, turning to Celso. "Is this how every human lives?" Celso took a deep breath and exhaled, his mind racing. He could barely comprehend the scale of what he was observing. He had seen species before, bold, brave species, yes, but never one like this. These humans, these beings from a distant, blue-green world, had something entirely different within them. It wasn't fear. It wasn't caution. It was a reckless abandon, a deep desire to confront their limits and surpass them. "Prepare the next feed," Selzo ordered, voice firm. "We must know more." As the crew watched the next set of clips, they saw humans taking even greater risks, some leaping from buildings into water below, others jumping from hot air balloons without parachutes. One human woman rode a motorcycle at such high speeds through a jungle that even the crew members of the Cylon vessel winced, expecting her to crash at any moment. And yet she did not. She grinned, fearless, as she weaved between trees, twisting and turning with a mastery that seemed beyond human. "They aren't afraid of death," another researcher whispered in awe. "They seek it out." Selzo nodded grimly. But why? Why do they willingly place themselves in harm's way? What motivates them to risk their lives? There was no answer. The data was clear, but the reasoning eluded them. The Cylon crew had seen many things in their time, species that sought knowledge, some that sought power, others that fought for survival. But this was different. Humans were not simply surviving. They were seeking thrill, embracing chaos, and dancing on the edge of destruction with an ease and joy that both fascinated and frightened the Cylon team. It was then that the next transmission came through. A human pilot, zooming through space in a ship that seemed far too primitive for such a journey. Selzo stared at the screen as the human spacecraft performed an aerial maneuver that should have been impossible, twisting in ways that would have torn apart even the most advanced ships of the Cylon fleet. "Should we establish contact?" one of the crew members asked, voice filled with uncertainty. Before Selzo could respond, a voice crackled over the communication system, sending a ripple of surprise through the room. "Unknown vessel, this is Pilot Mia Carter of the Earth Space Agency. I noticed you've been hanging around our orbit for a while." The voice came through, lighthearted and relaxed. "Thought I'd come up and say hello." The human, seemingly unfazed by the fact that they were speaking to an alien race for the first time, continued, "Mind if I dock? I've got about 2 hours of oxygen left, and I'd love to meet you guys in person." Selzo and his crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had been studying humans for months. But this was beyond anything they had prepared for. A human, not only capable of reckless stunts, but also fearlessly traversing space with inadequate equipment, was now calmly requesting to meet them. This, they realized, was the paradox of humanity. They were terrifyingly unpredictable, but there was also something undeniably captivating about their approach to life. Their courage, their defiance of conventional logic, and their unwavering will to push boundaries made them both a mystery and a marvel. "Initiate first contact protocols," Selzo said, his voice a mixture of awe and apprehension. As the airlock cycled and the door to the ship opened, Selzo braced himself. The humans were unpredictable, and this meeting would surely set the stage for the galaxy's future with them. The question that loomed over him now was no longer why humans did these things, but how they could be so remarkably resilient in the face of impossible odds. And as he waited for the human pilot to step inside, he wondered if they might finally understand what made humanity so powerful. First contact with a human pilot. The Cylon research vessel, despite its remarkable technological advancements, felt eerily still as the seconds ticked by. Inside the observation room, Selzo stood, eyes fixed on the flickering screen. The airlock cycled with a slow, almost mechanical hiss, and the crew braced themselves for the encounter. They had studied this species, humanity, closely, yet nothing could prepare them for the arrival of a single human pilot, a being who had defied not just the laws of space travel, but the very nature of survival itself. The door to the airlock hissed open, and there stood Mia Carter, the human pilot, grinning broadly as though she had just completed a routine flight, rather than one that could have ended in catastrophe. She wore a flight suit patched together from various makeshift repairs, her helmet tucked under one arm, and her hair wild and tousled, as if she had been caught in the windstorm of space. "Well, this is new," Maya said casually, stepping aboard the Cylon vessel with a confident swagger. She surveyed the surroundings, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "This place is a little fancier than what I'm used to. Got a place to sit down? My knees are a little wobbly after that gravity maneuver." Celso could barely hide his surprise at how nonchalant Mia appeared. There she was, a human from a primitive planet, who had just performed a series of impossible maneuvers in deep space. She was now calmly strolling through an advanced alien vessel, as though the gravity of the situation hadn't dawned on her at all. The Cylon crew remained silent for a moment, exchanging glances. They had been preparing for the encounter, but nothing could have prepared them for this casual, almost playful attitude. Humans, it seemed, had a capacity for confidence and fearlessness that was beyond comprehension. "Are you not afraid?" Celso finally asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Mia stopped walking and turned to face him, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Afraid? Nah. Never really thought about it. Honestly, the hardest part of space travel is getting the seatbelt to fit comfortably. Once you get past that, it's just like any other job, just with a lot more stars." Celso blinked, trying to process what he had just heard. He had never encountered a species quite like this. Other civilizations, when faced with the unknown, were cautious, logical, careful, and calculated. But Mia, and by extension humanity, seemed to thrive in uncertainty. They reveled in it. And the more Celso watched her, the more he realized that this wasn't an anomaly. It wasn't just Mia's personality. It was in the very core of human nature. "They're not just survivors," one of the crew members whispered. "They seem to need danger, to live in it." Celso nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle in his mind. Humans didn't shy away from danger. They actively sought it out. And while most species would have been crushed by the weight of such risk, humanity seemed to have thrived. It was no longer just a matter of physical endurance. It was a cultural identity. And it was this identity that had caught the attention of the galactic community. "Welcome aboard," Celso said slowly, motioning to the rest of the crew. "I must admit, I'm not entirely sure what to make of your approach to space travel. You are certainly unlike any species we've encountered." Mia gave him a grin, clearly enjoying the alien's bemusement. "I get that a lot," she said. "But hey, it's not all about surviving, right? It's about experiencing it all. The rush, the thrill, the unknown. It's what makes life worth living." Celso's antennas twitched in thought. Maya's words seemed to echo the truth behind humanity's reckless behavior. They weren't merely acting out of some misguided desire for danger. It wasn't about thrill-seeking in the way other species might view it. Humanity's instinct was to push the boundaries of what was possible. They found joy in overcoming obstacles, in facing the impossible, and coming out on top. As the crew showed Mia around the vessel, she marveled at the technology with genuine awe. Yet, every time a new piece of advanced alien equipment was demonstrated, she couldn't help but ask one question: how dangerous is it? Celso paused, taken aback by the repeated question. "Dangerous?" he asked. "Well, it's all relative. Our technology is designed for efficiency, precision. It's safe by all known standards." Mia raised an eyebrow. "So no one's ever pushed it to the edge. No one's ever taken it for a real spin." The question was almost too much for Celso to process. "Push it to the edge? What do you mean?" "You know," Maya said with a wink, "take it out for a joyride. Do a few crazy stunts, see how it handles." Her grin widened, and Celso could see that she was dead serious. The Cylon researchers exchanged uncertain glances. The very idea of risking their cutting-edge technology for fun seemed absurd. Yet Mia, this human pilot, was completely unfazed by the suggestion. To her, it was merely another way to learn. "In our species," Celso explained carefully, "we value order, precision. We believe in logic and understanding before acting." Mia chuckled. "Yeah, you all are really good at that. But sometimes logic can hold you back. What if you could go faster? What if you could do something no one else has ever done before? Don't you ever want to find out what happens when you break all the rules? There it was again, the idea of breaking rules, of defying expectations. The Cylon crew had seen it in every transmission, every study they had conducted on humans. It was not just about survival. It was about finding freedom in the chaos. Mia's challenge lingered in the air as the crew led her to the ship's main control room. She glanced at the sleek, highly efficient consoles, and her eyes lit up with excitement. "Is this your central control?" she asked, her voice tinged with both admiration and an unmistakable sense of thrill. Celso nodded. "Yes, it is. The systems are designed for the utmost efficiency. We monitor all operations, ensuring a smooth, calculated course." Mia grinned wider, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "So if I wanted to give it a shot, take the wheel for a spin, break a few protocols, what would happen?" The room went silent. Even the more seasoned members of the Cylon team were taken aback by her boldness. But Mia wasn't joking. She was genuinely curious. She was challenging them to step outside their comfort zone. Celso hesitated. "Well, you would cause considerable disruption to our systems. The calculations would be off. The course would be unstable. It could lead to catastrophic failures." Mia leaned forward, her voice dropping to a playful whisper. "But what if we did it anyway? What if the risk was worth it?" The tension in the room was palpable. To the Cylon researchers, the very notion was unthinkable. But to Mia, it was just another adventure. To her, the possibility of failure was just as exciting as the certainty of success. "Sometimes the safest way forward," she continued, "is by embracing the unknown. Because when you face the impossible, you don't just survive it, you make it your own." Celso looked at her, and for the first time, he understood something fundamental about humanity. These creatures weren't just beings that took risks for entertainment. They were driven by something deeper, a relentless pursuit of what could be, an unwavering belief that, even in chaos, there was the potential for greatness. "All right," Celso said slowly, an unexpected smile tugging at his lips. "Perhaps it is time we learn what happens when we break the rules." The testing begins. The air in the Cylon vessel was thick with anticipation as the crew prepared for the most unusual experiment of their careers. Their mission was to observe, learn, and report. They had studied countless alien species, dissected their behaviors, and catalogued their strengths. But with humans, it seemed there was no formula, no calculation that could predict their next move. They were a species fueled by unpredictability, defying every law that Cylon researchers had relied upon for centuries. And now, for the first time, the humans had presented a challenge: to break the rules and embrace the chaos. Mia Carter, the fearless human pilot who had seemingly stumbled onto their vessel like a rogue comet, was at the center of this new, uncharted experiment. She had once again convinced Celso to allow her to interact with the ship's systems, not just to observe them, but to test them in ways no alien technology had ever been tested before. "So, what do you want to do next?" Maya asked, her voice filled with curiosity and a mischievous excitement. The moment Celso had given her the green light to explore, she had taken it to heart. No more holding back. She was on an alien spaceship with technology far beyond her world, and she intended to make the most of it. The Cylon crew, already unsettled by her free-spirited nature, was about to witness something that would push them further into uncharted territory. Celso's antennae twitched nervously, but he kept his composure. "We will begin by testing your theory," he said, his voice steady. "You believe that the system's capabilities can be pushed beyond normal limits. You may begin with simple maneuvers." Simple maneuvers. Celso knew Maya would push the envelope, but he didn't anticipate just how far she would go. His instincts told him to be cautious, but his curiosity, the same curiosity that had led him to initiate this unprecedented interaction, made him hesitant to stop her. Mia grinned as she approached the central control console. The sleek, holographic interface shimmered before her, showing the star maps, the ship's navigation systems, and various system controls. She reached out, her fingers hovering over the controls. "All right, let's see what this baby can do," she muttered under her breath, as if talking to an old friend. The Cylon crew watched in stunned silence as Mia began to engage the systems, initiating a series of commands designed to test the limits of the vessel's capabilities. First, she activated the ship's engines, giving the Cylon researchers a few moments of silent awe as the ship surged forward with impressive speed. It was a maneuver that had been calculated to perfection by their advanced algorithms, but Mia had other plans. "Time to make it interesting," she said with a wink. Without warning, she turned the control wheel sharply, making the ship bank hard to the left. The sudden motion threw the researchers off balance, and several crew members stumbled, their legs failing to stabilize them against the unexpected shift. Mia's eyes gleamed as she grinned, feeling the rush of the centrifugal force pressing against her. The ship's sleek frame groaned under the stress, but it held together, barely. "That's impossible," one of the researchers shouted in disbelief. "The stress levels are too high. The ship was never meant to handle such a sharp maneuver at this speed." Mia didn't seem to hear him. Instead, she was caught up in the thrill, twisting the controls again to make the ship spin on its axis. The vessel now performed a barrel roll, sending the entire crew into a frenzy. "Hold on tight," Mia called out, laughing as she glanced back at the startled researchers. "If you're going to fly, you might as well do it right." "Stop. You're damaging the systems," Celso ordered, his voice rising with panic. But Mia was already having the time of her life. She performed another high-speed roll, this time sending the ship in an arc that would make even the most skilled pilots from her home planet dizzy. As the ship spun through space, Celso's heart raced. He had seen advanced ships perform delicate calculations for maneuvers, but what Mia was doing defied every law of physics, every rule he had come to know about interstellar navigation. "How is she doing this?" Celso whispered to himself, his eyes locked on the screen. The ship was pushing its limits, but something remarkable happened. Instead of breaking apart or losing control, the vessel seemed to adapt to the chaos Mia had introduced. It responded with unexpected grace, as if it had a life of its own. As the spinning slowed, Maya finally brought the ship back under control, her breathing steady despite the extreme maneuvers she had just executed. "Not bad for a rusty old ship, huh?" she said with a satisfied grin. The crew members looked stunned, mouths hanging open. Celso stood frozen, processing what had just occurred. How did you do that?" he asked, his voice filled with both awe and fear. Mia shrugged casually. "It's all about knowing what the ship can't do, and then making it do it anyway. You see, the thing about space is that it's vast. It's infinite. There's no real limit to what you can accomplish, only the limits you place on yourself." For a moment, Celso said nothing. The words hung in the air, reverberating through the chamber. The human species, which had once seemed like an unpredictable anomaly, was starting to make sense in a way he had never anticipated. They didn't just adapt to their environment. They thrived by breaking through every barrier in their path. Celso's mind began to shift, and a new question arose. Was this the key to humanity's power? The researchers began discussing what they had just witnessed, their voices a mixture of confusion and reluctant admiration. "This is impossible," one of them whispered. "We've never encountered a species like this before." But Celso wasn't listening. His mind raced with the possibilities. He had to admit, despite the reckless abandon with which Mia had piloted the ship, it was impressive. The ship had performed maneuvers that should have shattered its systems, yet here it was, still intact, still responsive. The rules that Celso had known for centuries about navigation, about what was possible in the universe, had been defied. "All right," Maya said after a few moments, breaking the silence. "I've got an idea. Let's take this thing to the next level. Celso's antennae shot up in alarm. What do you mean by that? Without waiting for his response, Mia grinned and began typing in a series of commands, her fingers dancing across the control panel. We're going to do a gravity-assisted slingshot maneuver. You guys ever tried that before? Celso's heart skipped a beat. No, this is uncharted territory. It's too dangerous. We will risk everything. Good, Maya said, her smile widening. Because that's the whole point. With a flick of her wrist, Mia engaged the ship's engines once again, this time initiating a trajectory that sent them directly toward the nearest black hole. The Cylon crew gasped in horror. The black hole's gravity was intense. Its pull could easily tear apart any ship that dared venture too close. But to Mia, it was just another challenge. She had studied the mechanics of gravity assists from her own world's primitive technologies, and she knew what needed to be done. The risk was immense, but the potential reward, the sheer thrill of surviving such an impossible stunt, was too great to ignore. We're going to use the black hole's gravity to catapult us to higher speeds, then slingshot around it. It's going to be epic. The Cylon crew held their breath as the ship hurtled toward the event horizon of the black hole. The gravitational pull grew stronger by the second, and the ship began to shake violently. Mia, however, remained calm, her fingers locked on the controls, steering them precisely around the event horizon. With a swift motion, she adjusted the angle, and the ship surged forward, propelled by the unimaginable force of the black hole's gravity. For a moment, it felt like time itself had frozen. The ship shot forward, and the crew was momentarily weightless as the Cylon vessel experienced speeds never before witnessed. The tension in the control room was unbearable. The ship seemed to twist and bend against the force of the black hole, and for one terrifying moment, it seemed as if they would never escape its pull. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the ship broke free, hurtling into space at unimaginable speeds. The entire crew let out a collective breath, their hearts racing with adrenaline. That, Maya said, with a satisfied grin, was the best thing I've ever done. Celso stood motionless, staring at the screen in disbelief. The human pilot, this reckless, fearless human, had not only survived the impossible, but had shown them that perhaps the very definition of possibility needed to be rewritten. Humans as weapons of chaos. The Cylon research vessel drifted quietly through space, its once steady hum now mingled with a sense of uncertainty that had taken root in the crew. The heart-pounding adventure that Mia Carter had led them through was still fresh in everyone's mind. They had barely escaped the black hole's powerful pull, and yet Mia had emerged unscathed, grinning with the same carefree attitude as she had shown throughout the entire ordeal. What they had just witnessed was no longer just an anomaly. It was a glimpse into the very heart of humanity's power. They didn't just survive danger. They relished in it. They sought it out. Celso, still recovering from the shock of the gravity slingshot maneuver, stood in the center of the observation room, pondering the implications of everything he had just seen. For the first time in his long career, he was uncertain. There was something about Mia, about humanity as a whole, that defied all of his understanding. Commander Celso, a voice broke through his thoughts. It was one of his crew members, Reelks, who had been busy analyzing data on the ship's console. You need to see this. Celso approached the screen with a sense of dread. He wasn't sure if he wanted to see more of humanity's chaotic exploits, but he knew the mission was far from over. As the screen flickered to life, new footage began to play, this time from Earth itself. Humans were engaging in yet another dangerous activity, and what he saw made his antennae twitch in discomfort. It was unlike anything they had encountered before. A group of humans were standing near the edge of a massive volcano. It was erupting, spewing ash and molten lava into the air, and yet the humans weren't fleeing in terror. No, they were riding makeshift boards down the slopes, their bodies precariously balanced as they surfed the molten rivers of lava. Volcano surfing, Reelds muttered. his voice tinged with awe and disbelief. Celso stared at the screen, his thoughts racing. "They're playing with fire. Literal fire," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. This is beyond anything we've ever seen. They actively seek out the most extreme danger possible." As the footage continued, it revealed more humans engaging in similarly reckless stunts. There were groups of people walking through burning buildings, climbing up skyscrapers without any safety equipment, and racing motorcycles through chaotic, crumbling cities. Everywhere, there was a sense of abandon, as though humans lived for the next rush of adrenaline, the next brush with death. "These creatures, they don't just survive," Rilke said, still transfixed by the footage. "They thrive on chaos. They embrace it." Celso, who had been at the forefront of galactic research for centuries, found himself at a loss for words. The behavior they had been observing was not just unusual, it was fundamentally alien to everything they had known about life. Even the most resilient species that Cylon had encountered in their travels would not willingly throw themselves into the jaws of danger like this. But humanity seemed to be designed for this very purpose. They didn't just adapt to hardship, they reveled in it. "What if?" Celso began, his voice trailing off as a thought struck him. He turned to Reels, his mind racing. What if their power lies not in their physical abilities or technological advancements, but in their refusal to accept limitations? What if their true strength comes from their capacity to face the impossible head-on? Rilke's eyes widened. "You're suggesting that they aren't just reckless. They're strategic." Celso paused, his mind working through the implications. "I'm beginning to believe that their approach to life is something more than insanity. They break every rule, defy every calculation, and yet they survive. They do the impossible because they don't recognize limits the way other species do." The crew, who had been listening intently, exchanged looks of confusion and awe. The idea that humanity's wild behavior could be classified as a form of strategy was hard to accept, but the more they observed, the more it made sense. What other species would willingly place themselves in harm's way if not for the pursuit of something greater, something that transcended mere survival? Before they could discuss further, another transmission came through. This time, it was a message from Earth's defense fleet. The voice on the other end was deep and steady, but there was a clear sense of urgency. "This is Commander Mike Thornton of the Earth Defense Fleet. We've got a situation. The enemy is advancing faster than we expected. Their ships are unlike anything we've seen before, highly advanced and strategically sound. But there's one thing they don't understand. Humans. They don't know how we think." Celso's curiosity piqued. He had heard of Earth's defense fleet, an impressive force by human standards, but still primitive compared to the galactic community. And yet, here was a commander, speaking with the kind of certainty and confidence that Celso had only ever seen in the most battle-hardened warriors. There was something about this message that was different. It was not desperation, but an unyielding belief in humanity's ability to overcome. "What do you mean?" Celso asked, opening a communication line. "How do you think, Commander?" Mike's voice crackled through the comm system, the static giving way to a sharp, focused tone. "We think like humans," he said, as though the answer were obvious. "We don't play by anyone's rules but our own. And right now, the enemy is making the biggest mistake of all. They're underestimating us." Celso leaned forward, intrigued. "You're suggesting that your tactics are different?" "Different?" Mike laughed, a dark, knowing sound. "Yeah, they're different. We don't follow the standard protocols. We don't think logically when we're faced with danger. We embrace it. We find the impossible. And we make it work. That's why we're still here. That's why we'll win." The connection went quiet for a moment as Celso processed what he had just heard. "So, your military strategy is based on embracing chaos." "Exactly," Mike replied. "We don't just play the game. We change the game. And trust me, when you're facing an enemy that expects you to act predictably, You do the exact opposite. Celso's eyes widened as the realization struck him. You are not just soldiers. You are agents of unpredictability, of chaos. You are weapons, not of precision, but of sheer willpower. Mike's voice came through again, this time with a hint of amusement. You could say that. We've learned a thing or two about using chaos to our advantage. Now, we just need a little bit of help from our friends in high places. Celso was silent for a moment. The idea of using chaos as a weapon was unprecedented. It was something that no galactic race had ever considered. But there was no denying that it had worked for humanity. They had defied all expectations, and now they were turning their greatest flaw, their unpredictability, into their greatest strength. I understand, Celso said, his voice slow and deliberate. We will assist you in any way we can. In the days that followed, the Cylon crew began to prepare for the next stage of their mission. They had studied humanity's extreme behavior, observed their willingness to throw caution to the wind, and seen firsthand how it had allowed them to survive, and even thrive in the most dangerous of circumstances. Now they would put it to the test in the grandest of all arenas, war. As they plotted their next moves, Celso couldn't help but reflect on the truth that was emerging. Humanity's power wasn't just physical, and it wasn't just technological. It was something more primal, more unpredictable. And for the first time, the Cylon crew realized that it wasn't chaos that made humanity dangerous. It was their ability to bend it to their will. The time had come to see what would happen when an entire species embraced the unpredictable. The battle for Earth. The Cylon research vessel drifted quietly near the edge of Earth's atmosphere, its sleek, silver hull blending seamlessly with the backdrop of deep space. The entire crew was on edge, still grappling with the profound implications of humanity's behavior. Celso stood in the observation room, his four eyes fixed on the holographic projection of Earth below. The planet, beautiful and chaotic, was the home of a species that had left him stunned and fascinated. For the first time in his life, Celso found himself facing an unknown, a force he couldn't entirely comprehend. Humans were reckless, unpredictable, and yet undeniably powerful. And now, they were engaged in a full-scale war. The enemies they faced were technologically superior and strategically brilliant, yet they were bound by the very thing that had limited every species Celso had ever studied: their predictability. The transmission from Earth's defense fleet had been clear. Commander Mike Thornton, the leader of humanity's most elite forces, had made it known that their strategy would not be based on conventional warfare. It would be something else entirely. It would be a battle of unpredictability. Commander Celso, the voice of a crew member interrupted his thoughts. We've just received a new transmission from Earth. It's from Commander Thornton. Celso turned to face the screen, his curiosity piqued. The time had come for humanity's chaotic tactics to be put to the ultimate test. If their unpredictable nature could defeat a superior enemy, then perhaps the entire galactic community had underestimated their true potential. The image of Commander Mike Thornton appeared on the screen, his face framed by the soft light of the ship's bridge. His eyes were sharp, focused, and despite the intensity of the situation, there was a calmness to his demeanor that Celso couldn't help but admire. Commander Celso, Mike began, his voice clear and confident. We've got a situation. The enemy fleet is closing in fast, but we've got a plan. I'm sending over the coordinates for a potential counterattack, but this is not going to be your standard military operation. We're going to have to break all the rules. What we need is chaos. Celso's antennae twitched, his mind immediately shifting to the implications of those words. Chaos, the very thing that made humans such a perplexing species. But Mike's tone was unwavering, confident in a way that suggested he knew exactly what he was doing. The time for hesitation was over. The war had begun. We've already begun preparations on Earth, Mike continued. We're going to use every weapon at our disposal, but our greatest asset, Commander, is the human spirit. The will to survive, to push beyond all logic. This isn't just about fighting. It's about making sure the enemy has no idea what we're going to do next. We're going to take the fight to them in ways they'll never expect. We'll show them what true unpredictability looks like. Celso's mind raced as he processed the implications of the plan. Humanity's approach was everything they had studied, everything they had observed, but amplified on a galactic scale. This wasn't just about unpredictability in tactics, it was about using chaos as a weapon. But could this strategy really succeed against an enemy that had superior firepower? Could the wild, unrelenting nature of human warfare truly hold its own? "We're ready," Mike's voice cut through Celso's thoughts. "But we need your help. The next few days are crucial. Our tactics may seem illogical, but we're counting on you to provide backup. We'll need your ship's firepower and your strategic insights. Together, we can turn the tide." Celso took a deep breath. The humans were asking for help, not just as allies, but as collaborators. They were taking a risk, one that few other species would dare, and yet it was the only one that could work. If chaos could defeat strategy, if unpredictability could break the enemy's lines, then humanity was truly more powerful than they had realized. "I'll send the coordinates for our fleet," Celso said, his voice steady, though inside, his thoughts were racing. "Prepare yourselves. This will be a battle unlike any other." The transmission ended, and Celso was left with a lingering sense of unease and excitement. He had witnessed humanity's resilience, their ability to take risks and face the impossible, but this was different. This wasn't just about surviving. They were about to use their most dangerous weapon, their ability to defy logic. As the crew began preparing for the upcoming battle, Celso found himself torn between admiration and skepticism. He had seen what humans were capable of when faced with extreme danger, but this was a war. A war where the stakes were higher than ever. Would their chaotic tactics really work? The unpredictable strategy. The battle for Earth had begun. On the surface, it looked like any other military conflict. Two opposing fleets, armed to the teeth, preparing to collide in the vastness of space. But behind the scenes, humanity's strategy was anything but conventional. Mike Thornton stood in the command center of Earth's defense fleet, his eyes scanning the tactical map in front of him. His fingers moved quickly over the holographic interface, inputting commands for the next phase of the plan. He knew the risks, but he also knew that if there was one thing humanity could count on, it was the ability to surprise. "All right, folks," Mike said, his voice filled with resolve. "We're about to turn the tables. Get ready to unleash chaos." The first move was deceptively simple. They would engage the enemy fleet directly, but not with the expected level of precision. Instead, Earth's fleet would split into smaller, less predictable groups, each performing bizarre, seemingly irrational maneuvers designed to confuse and disorient the enemy. Mike's fleet began to move. Ships that should have formed a tight formation broke off in all directions, darting unpredictably through space. They moved with erratic speeds, performing flips and barrel rolls, zigzagging through asteroid fields, and diving toward the enemy fleet at impossible angles. The enemy commanders, used to more calculated approaches, watched in confusion as Earth's ships danced around them like fireflies in the night. "This is madness," one of the enemy commanders muttered, watching in disbelief as the human ships moved in ways their sensors couldn't predict. Their movements don't make sense. They're not even following basic tactics. The human fleet's unpredictable movements caused the enemy's targeting systems to malfunction. Weapons fired in the wrong direction. Shields failed to engage at the right time. The human ships, on the other hand, were immune to the enemy's expected responses. They seemed to anticipate the enemy's moves before they happened, because there was no pattern to follow. Mike watched as the chaos unfolded. "This is exactly what I wanted," he muttered to himself. "Now let's see if we can push it even further." He activated the next phase of the plan, the party poppers and space confetti. As the battle raged on, Earth's fleet deployed what they had jokingly referred to as party poppers. They were small, inconspicuous devices designed to look like harmless space debris, but inside was a payload of advanced nanobots capable of disabling the enemy fleet systems. The poppers were launched in rapid succession, spreading across the battlefield like confetti at a parade. The enemy fleet, still trying to recover from the unpredictable movements of the human ships, was blindsided by the nanobots. The tiny devices slipped past their shields and began to wreak havoc on their systems. The enemy's weapons failed to fire. Their navigation systems scrambled. Chaos reigned as their once coherent formation fell apart, unable to respond to the madness unfolding around them. Mike grinned as he watched the enemy fleet begin to falter. "They never saw it coming," he said, his voice filled with satisfaction. But that was only the beginning. The final maneuver. Supernova Surfer. The ultimate phase of the plan involved what the humans had come to call the Supernova Surfer maneuver. Earth's fleet would use a dying star's gravitational pull to slingshot their ships at near-light speeds, sending them hurtling toward the enemy flagship. It was a maneuver so audacious, so dangerous, that even the most seasoned commanders in the galaxy would never consider it. But the humans didn't hesitate. Their ships accelerated toward the dying star, riding the gravitational waves as they plunged toward the center of the battle. The enemy, still reeling from the earlier chaos, tried to adjust their tactics, but it was too late. Earth's fleet exploded forward, racing through space at impossible speeds, making sharp turns and flips as they used the star's dying energy to launch themselves at the heart of the enemy fleet. The enemy flagship, once considered invincible, was no match for the sheer chaos of the human assault. The human ships tore through its defenses, outmaneuvering every countermeasure, and in moments, the flagship was destroyed in a blinding explosion. As the battle came to a close, Celso stood in the observation room, watching the final moments unfold on the screen. The enemy fleet was in disarray, and the humans, though battered and bruised, had emerged victorious. Celso couldn't help but feel a strange sense of awe. Humanity had done the impossible. They had turned chaos into their greatest weapon and had won. The unpredictable nature of their tactics, their refusal to play by the rules, had proven to be the deciding factor. They weren't just fighting for survival, Celso whispered. They were fighting for freedom. And in the end, that's what made them unstoppable.